There once was a man named Gabrius. He wasn't trying to save us. He slipped on a rock and hit his... Oh wait, that's not how this rhyme is meant to go.
In the land of shadows, wandering free, with a grimoire of curses in hand, I see battles fought in night, dark powers unleashed, a cure to break, we quest and we preach. Magic lines, ancient lore, all in the dust, scepters raised high, breaking the rust. Through forest gloom and whispers so sly, from the castle walls echoes touch the sky. Armored knights and magic rites, the stars align. With loot in hand, our destinies entwine. In tales of old, where legends grow, we seek the cures through fire and snow.
The Black Grimoire Cursebreaker is a game I picked up a few months ago now and have slowly started playing again recently. It's self-described as a story-driven medieval fantasy adventure inspired by old-school RPGs of the past. And it doesn't take long to realize exactly what this game is inspired by.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What type of dog is this?
RuneScape, could it be more obvious? Made in the Unity engine, the art style leans well into the abilities of the modern engine, with nice particle effects and interesting cutscenes. A familiar enough story in our beloved point-and-click style of gameplay. Whilst I don't think the story itself is overly gripping, it's also not overwhelming or confusing, which works well in a game styled this way. Rothar Aircrest, a lord of the lands, who has been dead for a while now, suddenly has been brought back to the land of the living by a mysterious mage named Gabrius. When Rothar realizes there's not much he can do and must obey Gabrius as his minion master, he's set on a quest to help Gabrius whilst trying to figure out how to break the curse set on him, hence Cursebreaker in the title. You play as Rothar traversing the lands, meeting characters along the way, fighting, solving puzzles, and gathering information on how to break your curse and return to your resting place. Gameplay wise, the game certainly brings you to the quote-unquote RuneScape experience. It's the only way I could describe it. If you enjoy questing on RuneScape, that's what this game brings in a single-player style. Yes, it does technically have areas where you can see other players running around the world, although it took me a while to realize how this works, and outside of making the world feel more alive, I guess, I haven't actually figured out why there is any multiplayer aspect to this game at the moment. They do self-describe it as purely being a social aspect. It is, however, in the early access category like many games today, so perhaps it's penned for some future state of the game that incorporates more of a co-op multiplayer experience. Just like its inspiration, the game has two core skilling aspects, combat and life skills. The three main combat styles, or four I should say, are attack, defense, archery, and sorcery. And the life skills include smithing, crafting, tailoring, alchemy, mining, woodsmanship, fishing, and cooking. The maximum level achievable on these goes to 50 at this point, with relevant milestones tied to certain levels you reach, as an example, equipping armor at certain defense levels. When creating your character, you can choose 4 traits to boost, which gives you a good view into a skill system, which I found quite neat. As the game is heavily centered around questing and story, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of side quests and little stories around the world. As someone who enjoys just completing everything, I found myself killing everything to add it to my bestiary, or as I call it in every game, my Pokedex, and talking to every NPC with a question mark on their head. Through this, I found that the starting traits can be expanded upon, not just through purchase from skill vendors, but also through completing certain quests or activities. Traits are like permanent character buffs. You get to help you progress further and win more in life in general. The other thing that I found interesting is progression. Progression on your save is permanent. One thing I learnt the hard way is you can fail quests, and you can fail them permanently. You will not get a retry. Never fear though, death is not permanent, as you are technically a zombie. If you do happen to die, you will respawn from a nearby respawn point and you will go back to loot your belongings. Sometimes, some of your items may be missing as a scavenger has visited your corpse prior. You'll need to find that asshole and buy your stuff back if this is the case. Okay, let's talk game design. So far, here are my positives. The world feels nice. It's full. There's some large towns, a lot of activity happening in the towns. Sound design is good. It needs more original music that is thematic, but atmosphere is somewhat nice. Maybe a little bit of a reduction in some of the audio in cities like Haywind, which is the first major city you go to, but I can't really complain. Art style. Yes, it is tried and tested, but the little touches put in made possible by the Unity engine, they do elevate. I think it's done tastefully and does not just make the whole thing look like a shit show. I see potential to add more vibrant colours and variation. However, that may come over time, I guess. There haven't been many game-breaking bugs and glitches, and nothing to make me completely lose my mind. As I go into most early access games expecting this was a pleasant surprise. Most of the time, my gameplay was smooth. Nothing major made me stop to question my life choices, and well, yeah, all good on the Western Front. And finally, I hate dialogue. I hate reading dialogue. I am not a big fan of text walls, especially in RPGs.
It's taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives. I mean, you think about it. More lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
Now, I'm not saying there is none of this in this game. If anything, there's no voice acting, and most of the time, if you want to follow the story, you need to read. However, they have done a great job in summarizing dialogue to quick 2 to 3 liners. It doesn't detract from the style or leave questions unanswered, and I don't need to click through it a million times or wait for the text to scroll. I think with a little bit of voice acting for the major story plot, this would be the most acceptable version of a text-driven storytelling, for me personally. That said, some may disagree and want to play Reading Simulator 2024. Just not me. Questing is interesting. Whilst most of the quests have been so far retrieval or combat, it doesn't really hold your hands in terms of where to go and what to do. Then again, I actually played the publisher's first title, Granskreia Online, and was somewhat expecting the quests to be brutally old school. Heck, I even wrote a guide for a quest back in the day. If you enjoy the more old school find your feet and explore aspects of an RPG, Grimoire does meet a good balance of these elements. So, any areas for improvement? Kind of, but they are probably subjective, much like the rest of this video, and I say these hoping they are already on the radar for improvement and development. The first one is the UI. It does need a bit of work at the moment. Things like the inventory and the menus feel like placeholders with basic art styles. Whilst it doesn't affect your gameplay, it does feel out of place with the rest of the game. The second thing I would probably really call out is variety. You know, in the first few hours, you are relegated to mostly the starter areas, but the point I made earlier about utilizing more vibrant colors will not only add some visual distinctions, but it will also make the world feel more varied. Right now, running between villages and major cities, it all just feels like the same place. As an example, if you give the fishing village more character, like in terms of that fishing vibe, compared to maybe the docks in Haywind, which is the major city, that would make the player really feel like they're traveling between different places. I think this point also will relate to the roads and greenery whilst traveling. The same farm and tree assets are spread across 2 points quite often. Not only does this take away from the excitement of adventure, but many times I was just completely lost. Defining landmarks to help guide players on where they are in the world is super critical to large open world games, especially ones like these. However, again, I think this is something that will come with time as the development grows and expands, and they cultivate that feedback. And last but not least, this was probably the most negative experience I had playing the game. Interacting with the map, the mini-map, the large map, the medium map, all versions of it. The first thing I expected when pressing M on my keyboard was for a full window scrollable map to open, and for me to see how big the world actually was. Instead, I was greeted with my mini-map getting bigger until it took up approximately a quarter of my screen. The next thing I wanted to do was scroll up and down by holding down click. This, however, started to set a waypoint for my character to start running towards a point. Mind you, pathfinding is still something that needs a little bit of work, as the game tends to not deal with it in a great way. But at some stage, you just get used to the way the map is put in the game. However, it can certainly be improved to align to a more intuitive playstyle. So here we are at the end of the video. Overall, I will continue to play and follow the development of Black Grimoire. It has captured me with its adaptation of a childhood classic which I still revisit till this day. It also speaks to me in the sense of someone following their dream. For those RuneScape nerds who used to dream of making their own RuneScape when they grew up, and yes, my dad does indeed work for Jagex, Alypa Games have done a great job in showing what happens if you don't forget or give up on that dream. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you can go check out the game if it is something that you might enjoy. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.